Yo, Joey Svendsen, what's up, everybody? Good to have you back. Reflecting now on how old I am. I helped someone, a good friend of mine, move the other day. And I realized, in like 12 years, I'll be that guy that gets to say, hey, I'll come over and help you with some things, but I got to be careful with lifting heavy stuff. And I should have done it this time around. Like, for the first time ever helping someone move, and I jog, I keep in shape and all of that, but going up and down stairs with super heavy stuff, I literally had to break away for like a solid 15 minutes, drink water, take deep breaths, and then I periodically had to take more. I felt like whatever, man. I was telling my kids the other day that I remember when Skittles came out. I remember when they came out, they were like a new thing. It was like crack for kids. I remember when red balloons and purple horseshoes was added to daggum Lucky Charms, man. You thought those marshmallows always were in there? No, sir. The purple horseshoes and the red balloons were not a part of the original marshmallow crew. And I was there when they joined. In the last episode, my kids kicked things off, and I had my daughter say how this podcast isn't just a podcast, it's a journey. And I meant it to sound cheesy, but it probably came across like I was trying to make it sound serious. But in all actuality, I do see it that way. A lot of you have been listening to me for years. This podcast has been going around since 2015, I think. I'm pretty sure Bad Christian that I was a part of started in 2014. You've heard the storyline of Joey asking questions, coming to grips with having to admit that certain things I can't accept anymore as making sense. And all along, I feel that God has been with me through this journey as I seek Jesus and his truth. And many of you are on similar journeys, and I'm telling you, it's such a gift when I hear from you guys and I pick up a sense that it may be a loose manifestation of community, but it is a community all the same. Listeners of this podcast that are asking similar questions, going through similar life experiences, letting go of things similar to one another. And we do have some discussion on the Pastor with No Answers discussion page. You can look at the show notes and join us there. But I do want to let you know, behind the scenes, we are unfolding some more intentional approaches to community that a lot of you will be interested in. Looking forward to sharing that with you, but just know that it is going on behind the scenes. It will soon rise to the surface. And for some of you that, I don't know, feel isolated, not connected, not feeling like there's a community that you can connect to, I'm hoping that for some of you, this will be a solution to that. Love you guys. I really do. Don't know you all, but I feel like I love you. And we're going to be joining right now John Mark McMillan, Ellen Mauro, and myself as we talk about police, as well as weaponizing black voices against black people. And then the Friendly Atheist joins us. Some good learning for us all. But you guys have a good day, a good week, and whenever you are listening to this, I don't know when that is, but man, wouldn't it be cool if you're listening to this and COVID-19 is a thing of the past? Whoa.
What's really interesting, I got a lot of DMs from people, and I actually got quite a few DMs, well, not quite a few, but several DMs from people of color who actually have a little bit different point of view, and maybe it's a smaller group of people, and sent me some, things about, gosh, I'm getting way too deep into this right now. But, just what it means if, okay, for instance, let's say there's a situation where a cop kills somebody, and I think most of these cases are just absolutely horrible, you know what I mean? And the cop is guilty, right? But I really want to live in a country where, and even though the system is broken, I want to live in a country where that police officer has a trial, goes to trial. But let's say you're a juror in that particular situation, and what would be better for the country is if this police officer goes to jail, even though you're not convinced that they broke the law, right? At that point, you're like, well, I need the right thing for the country is to put this person in jail. At that point, mob justice is the prevailing justice. The fear is not about a specific situation. The fear is that we will start to make decisions based on expectations, not based on reality, right?
Yeah. Well, the idea is to change the law so that
exactly.
It's pretty cut and dry.
Exactly. Well, no, I guess that's the point. Change the law, but but getting rid of the law is probably not a good idea for anybody. Making it better is probably the way to go.
Yeah.
But removing the law, removing police officers, I just don't know that that's helpful. And I know people are going to be so mad at me
like
for saying
removing
that.
all police officers is what you're
let's
saying?
just get rid of police altogether.
Well,
I think reform police, demilitarize the police for sure. But like defund them, and maybe that means something I don't understand.
Defund me. Let me tell you what's going on in Seattle as far as defunding goes. So, defund does not mean wipe out the entire budget.
Sure.
When they're saying defund the police, they're saying take the insane budget that they have. The Seattle Police Department's budget is insane. If you compare it to healthcare, education, all these other things that the city has budgets for, that they allot money to, the police budget is insane. And so all defunding is like, let's gouge it and then fill in these other things so that we can have for a non-violent emergency call, we don't have an armed militant showing up when we need a therapist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's all defunding means.
Yeah.
And some people are really extreme in saying abolish, which I don't agree with, because I know I've had to call the police a couple times because I need someone to come check on me because I live next to an empty lot. And sometimes there's some really shady shit that goes down next door.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess this is sort of my point, is that you say defund the police, you're demanding people defund the police, but the people who you want to hear you are hearing something else. They're hearing abolish the police, remove the police. So you want better schools, you don't defund the schools. You know what I mean? Like, I want cops. Like, do I want a surgeon?
Yeah.
Do I want a surgeon who makes $5,000 a year and has to work 2 extra jobs to support themselves? Do I want a surgeon who has a pool? If I'm getting heart surgery, I want my surgeon to have a pool. And maybe I'm over simplistic in my thinking, but I can't imagine not having some sort of law enforcement, whether it's police or whatever else you want to call them, human beings who enforce the law, the just law that we need to fight to, have, right? Like, I want them to be the best human beings we can possibly afford.
Yeah. Well, they need more than 6 months of training. First of all, I went to beauty school. I got more hours in Washington State than you have to have as an armed police officer. And anytime you enter a situation with a weapon, you are escalating it, period. Mm-hmm. That's just science. And, I forgot what I was going to say. Dang it. I was going to just really go at it. Dang it.
Oh, it gets worse and worse. Like, once you hit 40, that kind of stuff just happens all the time. In fact, when I'm podcasting and a thought comes to my head, I have to write it down or type it, or else it is gone.
Well, and then we know that pregnancy, you lose 3% of your gray matter in your brain, and it doesn't redevelop for 3 to 4 years. And my daughter's not 4 yet, so I've lost 6% of the gray matter in my brain.
Oh my! What I've recognized, something that frustrates me a little bit with the season that we're in. Oh, season.
Oh,
gosh,
I remembered what I was going to
choice
say.
Of words sometimes. Go back to Ellen then. Let's hear you.
Oh, I was just going to say that we should feel that way about teachers.
Yeah.
We should.
No, totally. 100%.
If I'm going to send people talk about school districts and best schools for young kids because the best education, it's all about teachers, then why are we having them buy their own supplies and they can't? My husband got his master's in teaching, and I'm so thankful that he's not a teacher because we would be so broke.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we should be treating teachers like we treat surgeons.
Right.
But like police officers, if we found out that there was just malpractice going on all the time and surgeons everywhere were just fucking people up, we would be like, you know what? We should just like take them all out, rethink everything, and have very few surgeons. Like you wouldn't want to just like blindly have a surgery next week if you knew that malpractice was like at an insane high, which is like what police brutality is like.
It's like, have you heard Chris Rock's thing on bad apples? He says, you know, every time something happens like this, we say, well, there's a few bad apples. He's like, there's some lines of profession where you can't have bad apples. He's like pilots.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, you know, are you going to get on a plane if American Airlines says, you know, we've mostly got good pilots, but there's some bad apples that would rather crash in the mountains than land.
You never know when you're going to get a drunk one.
Right. What I was about to say a second ago is how it just frustrates me a little bit when a white person will basically send me a video or something, and I've more love to anyone who's done this. Don't want to shame anybody, but basically saying, listen to this black guy, and basically this black guy supporting very Republican, conservative, racism is not a problem sort of thing.
Like Dr. Hope, what's his name? Hogue.
Right. And do I think that their voice needs to be valued and considered? Yes. But I feel like white people latch on to someone like that, and then they don't listen to the multitudes. Like it's like their excuse to say, well, listen to him. He's black. He has authority to speak on this. Everybody else is wrong. And oh my gosh, it's just
I think that's weaponizing a black voice against black people. Yeah, I think when white people do that, it's very gross. That's why I joked about Candace Owens, because if someone mentions the word Candace Owens, you know, a mile away, all they get is Fox News. Yeah. And both my dad and my father-in-law have sent us videos of black Republican conservative doctors or pastors or whatever. And there's very few black conservative Republicans, right? And so when they find one, they latch onto it and they're like, see what I believe is right because we found a black person saying the same thing. That is weaponizing their voice.
Yeah, all they're saying is, I'm going to learn from black people who already think like me. Those are the ones I'm going to learn from. They made the black person agree with them because they found one. It's sort of like the idea of, when you read scripture, are you trying to conform to how God wants you to change, or are you trying to conform God to fit the mold that you want, that makes more comfortable for you, so that you don't have to you know what I mean? It's sort of like, conceptually for me, it's kind of like that.
I feel like it's like that with climate change. I have friends who don't believe in climate change, and there'll be 11 arguments, and 10 of them say climate change is a problem, and one says that it's not. And they'll find that one, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I imagine we all do that, though, a little bit. But, you know, we tend to gravitate towards the things that prove the way we already believe. But
yeah. Well, the thing about the black, and I feel silly we're a bunch of white people talking about this, but the black conservative Republican pastors, preachers, whatever, they're usually pretty privileged. They usually are not super poor, you know, and they can say that they grew up a certain way. Like, I wish I could think of this guy's name, but we need like your average black voice in an argument, and not these very extreme politicized. Oh gosh, gross.
All right, we're here with Hemant Mehta. Did I say the last name right?
yes.
Yeah, and I think I may have told you this when you were on Bad Christian. is, and it's probably a silly thing for me to do. You're like, the same old. But I have an Indian friend, and when I first met him, I could not say his name right because it was Shijo.
Okay.
And I always wanted to say Shijo, and he's like, no, say it like you're about to say shit. Shijo. And I was like, okay, I got it now. I got it.
Yes.
But yeah, so for our listeners' sake, here's how this episode lined up is I remember Hemant from our interview that we did years ago on Bad Christian, and I was just like, man, that was a nice guy, really cool conversation. And so I hit you up just to see if you'd be willing to do another one. And when you said yes, then I went to my Word document to come up with stuff to talk about.
Yeah, sounds good.
How you been doing, man?
I've been all right, as good as anybody, I guess, right now.
Yeah, for sure. And where do you live?
I'm in a suburb of Chicago, Naperville.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
They have things pretty much on lockdown in Chicago?
Pretty much, yeah. So I'm basically home, can't really do much of anything right now.
Right. I hear you. Well, cool, man. I appreciate your time. And so my questions, I would say, kind of revolve around understanding atheism. I'm not here to have like any sort of debate, although I would assume that some of it may go back and forth a little bit, but it's mainly for my understanding. I do not care to have a debate at all. I do want to ask you this. Have you listened to Kirk Cameron stuff about Christianity?
On and off. Depends on, I mean, I know his gist. It's, sorry.
No. It's fine. I was going to say, and you still don't believe? So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If you see, I mean, I was thinking about this. I was thinking, it is so crazy, the world that you live in and the world that I live in the sense of, I was thinking if something bad happened to my kid, let's say they got hit by a car, but it wasn't fatal, I would immediately, as I'm helping, I'd immediately be thinking, God, please don't let her die. God, please. Yeah. If that was a situation you were in, you would literally be like, I got to figure this out. There's not anybody that's going to help me. And that's just, that's a crazy thought. I'm not saying you're crazy. I'm saying that is just like, I've never, ever been in that headspace ever. And I don't know if I asked you this before. Were you ever a believer of any God?
I was a believer. I mean, I was raised religious, and I was fairly religious. It's Jainism. It's a smaller Indian religion, but there is the God belief stuff, or there is the belief in that sort of thing. So that I definitely was that until about, 14 or 15. Yeah. So I've had a little bit of experience with at least belief, if not what most people think of.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And what kind of stuff, I didn't actually do any digging
here
because I remembered you and liked the conversation, but what are some things that you're doing now with Friendly Atheist? And is it something that you feel you are kind of on the offense to help people get out of religion because it's unhealthy, or do you see yourself as kind of like a resource for people that come to that conclusion on their own? Like, do you feel like you have a calling of some sort? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word calling, but I feel like my best use, like the thing I can help people with, is I don't care if they become atheists or not, or at least that's low on the priority list. It's I don't care what you are, but here's my problems with whatever the news story is.
Right.
I will tell you what those problems are. And I think there's two ways to go about it. One is if you are an atheist, then you can read these news stories that concern religion from an atheist perspective. And hopefully you're like, yup, that's the voice I want to hear that I'm not hearing anywhere else. That's one side of it. The other side is if you are religious, I think you should still be able to read like 95% of what I'm writing and be like, yes, even if I believe the way these Christians or these people are going about this issue is the wrong way.
Right.
And hey, who knows? Maybe that's the seed that gets planted in their head where it's like, if I can get you to think about these things the way I'm thinking about things, maybe at some point you do lose your faith, but I'm not keeping a tally mark anywhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I actually do hear from plenty of progressive Christians, religious people, who are just like, those people that you write about are embarrassing. Like, I wish they weren't part of my tribe. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like, I'm not picking on the fringe people only. Like, it's low-hanging fruit to go after, Westboro Baptist Church.
Right.
I feel like a lot of the time I'm going after the sort of pastors most people deal with. So it's like, well, this is not like far from whatever it is a lot of you believe. So again, the reason you asked me if I wanted to do, or I don't know if you asked me, but the reason I really don't do religious debates is I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care if someone believes or not. That's
right.
such a low thing. And I think part of that is just politics has taken over my priorities as opposed to religion.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, if there are religious people who feel the same way I do about a lot of political issues and things tied to that, I don't care.
Right.
Then believe if we, get a beer later on or something, it's like, all right, fine, maybe we'll have that conversation. But it's not something I actively bring up with anybody, really.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. Speaking of like progressive Christians, do you have maybe you're such a genuine guy. I don't want to use the word respect because that assumes that you disrespect other people, but do you have a deeper level of maybe camaraderie with someone who's more progressive, or shall I just say not fundamentalist, like not thinking COVID-19 is God's punishment?
Yeah.
And there's so many progressive Christians that see the Bible differently. Like they're not going to go head to head with you about Adam and Eve being literal. They don't really care. If they had to guess, they'd probably say no. Like, is that to you? Is that kind of a different territory though? At the very least, do you see kind of a distinction there, or not?
It's. Really? I mean, it's an interesting question. I don't even know that I would use camaraderie so much. I think that's giving it more
too much. Yeah,
too much. Because I still think they're wrong,
right.
But the thing is, when I'm talking to the more progressive Christians, we're not talking about those issues because, again, could we have that debate? Could we talk about, is the Bible a actually good book? Is it a place you should get your morals and ethics from? Those are debates you could presumably have with a progressive Christian, and we might come to different endpoints on that. But usually when I'm having conversations with them, that's not what we're talking about. As opposed to, pick your fundamentalist. Every conversation I would have with those people are about, religious, age-old religious questions, Adam and Eve type of stuff.
Right.
But when it's with progressive Christians, I just don't have those conversations because it's usually like, let's take the COVID-19 thing. It's, should these churches be granted exceptions to the rule? Are they essential services? Like, on a church-state separation front, we're usually on the same page. When it comes to are Christians being persecuted, we're usually on the same page. So I don't know. Those things just don't come up. So it's not that I think I have more respect for their faith because I still think they're wrong. So I don't know that it's fair to say I agree with the way they look at this stuff.
Right. Not any more common ground.
It's not common ground.
Camaraderie.
Yeah, it's not even common ground on religion. It's common ground on all these other things that take a priority for me.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you know what? We have these differences about religion, but at least with you, with progressive Christians or the like, we can all set that aside because we have other more important issues on the plate to talk about. Let's focus on that stuff. And so that to me is like we're just avoiding the topic, but we can.
Right.
We can avoid the topic because it's like, even politics, there are like no atheists open atheists who run for political office. And you know what? For the most part, the people I vote for are religious people, and it doesn't matter because I know they're not going out there saying, I want to legislate based on my religion, but I'm inspired by my religion to do this stuff. I care about the poor because I'm religious and my Bible, blah, 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 teaches me to do whatever. I don't care. You want to help the poor and you're going to do it in this way that I agree with. Fine. That's what I'm voting for. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't care about your religious side. It just doesn't mean anything to me. Yeah. But at least it doesn't have to. We can come to the same endpoint. So I feel like that's where I've gone on my own journey, where it's like I wanted to pick those fights. Or at least I enjoyed those fights. Right. Maybe with more fundamentalist types, conservative Christian types. And now it's like, you know what? That's such a low-hanging fruit because, the world's on fire. Yeah. So maybe we got other stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I'll ask you a funny question. You would feel differently about this interview if I was Franklin Graham, right? I mean,
probably, because whenever I see him in the news or someone like him in the news, I see them using their religion to hurt other people, specifically people I care about. And he's using religion as a tool to spread hate.
Yeah.
If Franklin Graham wasn't a Christian, he was just a regular guy saying all the same stuff he does, but you just took out the Bible stuff, I mean, I think that would be pretty simple, standard hate speech. But because he couches it in religious language, he's allowed to say, like, no, I'm just a Christian speaking the gospel. I'm just trying to spread the gospel. I'm a good Christian man. And he seems to get away with more stuff because he could tie it to Christianity. Whereas if he went around saying, oh, I just run a group, Jews can't be a part of it, Muslims can't join. No, it's a charity group. It's a wonderful group. We help people. I don't think he'd be able to get away with it as easily as he does, or get invited to talk about it on news shows, talk shows, if he couldn't also say, this is what the Bible teaches me to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would be the conversation with him, because everything he does is politically bad from my perspective, and he couches it in religious language.
Right.
But for what it's worth, I think a lot of Christians have the same problem that I do with him. And so it's not even just that he pisses off atheists, It's that he upsets a lot of people who don't share his views.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, as you were saying that stuff, I was probably I was thinking to myself, and I was like, yeah, you probably won't like this. But I when I think of someone like Franklin Graham, I think of someone who legit thinks, how I am is how God wants me to be. I know it's not popular, but neither was Jesus popular. And so I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And it is loving to point such things out to people. And, if I mix with other religions and that sort of thing, then I'm going to taint the gospel and all of that.
Right. But I don't doubt
But when you bring up the example of not even being willing to serve alongside people that don't share your faith, to me, that's kind of like, come on, man.
And again,
seriously.
my problem would be less for example, so we set up this makeshift hospital in Central Park in New York City. I actually don't really care if he just said, we're doing this charity thing, whatever it is he does. Don't get me wrong. I know he does good stuff in theory, like the people he helps. I like that he has, whatever. When you have like tens of millions of dollars, you better do something good with it. So I'm glad he's doing what he does. But if some random dude, Bob Graham, steps up and says, well, the city of New York is partnering with me, which they did, to set up this thing, I basically have their stamp of approval on what I'm doing. And also I have this list of horrible things you have to agree with in order to work with me.
Yeah.
We'll help everybody. Right. But if you want to be on the front lines, you have to believe trans people are all lying about who they are. You have to say whatever it is, everyone who's not Christian is going to burn in hell for eternity, or whatever. I mean, I think people would have a very different reaction if it was a random dude. I'm not doubting his sincerity that he actually believes this stuff. I don't think it's a game with him. I think he's telling the truth about what he believes. My problem is that the city of New York partnered with him. My problem is when he goes into public schools and they're like, oh, Samaritan's Purse, you want to give away these things for Christmas to kids who don't have presents? Of course we want to work with you and put together these boxes to send to other places. It's when he's partnering with the schools that I have a problem with it, because, again, he's allowed to be a bigot. I don't have a problem with him being whatever things he is. It's that, because he's Franklin Graham, the city of New York says, fine, we'll work with you. Whereas if some random dude said, yeah, I want to help out, I have a lot of money to help out with, but if you want to work with me, you have to say gay people can't have rights.
Right.
It's like, no, you would never say yes to this. If it was a Muslim saying the same thing, I promise you that tent city would not have been set up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, Ken Ham, the creationist, when he brought Ark Encounter to Kentucky, they said we're going to bring all these jobs into the community that really could use some jobs. And that was one of the perks. That was one of the incentives to give him money to say, bring your thing here. But of course, when he puts up his thing, he has the same sort of statement of faith that says, if you want to be a janitor at Ark Encounter, you have to say gay people can't have rights. You have to say trans people don't exist, things like that. And again, the city gave him all these tax breaks and deals so he could bring jobs. They didn't say in advance, no, the only jobs we're offering are to people who think exactly like us.
Yeah. I think, for what it's worth, that we'll just call it Franklin Graham's brand of Christian faith. I think we're moving into territory where that is over time going to be seen as very archaic. Like, I
agree. Do you think that's going to be, do you think Franklin Graham is doing more good or more bad?
I don't know.
For Christianity.
Oh, for Christianity and the Christian message, I would say more bad. But it seems like the extent of something like Samaritan's Purse as far as actually serving people, that would be a big question mark for me. But absolutely. I mean, I think people that point to Trump as their answer to prayer is horrible for Christianity. And there's so many times where I do want to tell someone like you, that's not me, man. That's not me. And then at the same time, I don't want to come across this arrogant asshole who's better than everybody because, but there is a line that I want to draw and say, look, we're all imperfect, but once you get to like Westboro Baptist is low-hanging fruit. Come on. Like if you lump them into me and other Christians that would denounce them as well, I'd be like, that's prejudice almost, that would be a
and you know what? Here's the thing though. If I pointed to Westboro Baptist Church as indicative of how a lot of Christians think, I think Christians would rightfully be like, dude, come on, that's on the fringes. That doesn't represent everybody. And I think most atheists would recognize that as well. So no other Christians believe and think and act the way they do. And yet, when it comes to white evangelicals and their support for Trump, what do we say? Like 2016, 80% of them voted for Trump, and it doesn't look like that's changing in 2020. Right. And all the prominent white evangelical voices are either still with him or I think one of them shifted to him recently. And that's the thing. So all of a sudden, I'm actually making a video about this soon, which is to say when it's one thing for Franklin Graham to do these things and be a bad witness for the Christian message, but when we're talking about this huge, overwhelming majority of white evangelicals doing the same awful stuff and hitching their ride to Donald Trump's wagon. Yeah. Now I can pin that on all of you. That's so much easier to do than Westboro Baptist Church because those two, the Venn diagram is much more overlapping than it would in the past. And that just seems like that's a bad bet to me.
What I would say, this is my perspective of things, is that first in evangelicalism, there still is, if you take 20%, that's numerous people at the very least. I'm a part of a church that's not politically. We don't teach politics because we believe that causes, it's just a polarizing thing. So we just kind of leave it out. But behind the scenes, I know that sure there are some Trump supporters, but there's a lot. I mean, when I meet with a group of pastors, for instance, I mean that is not, and maybe it's a unique group because I am in the South, but it's not a bunch of thumbs up Trump people by any means. So. But here's what I would say.
I want to pin you down on this because I'm curious about this, and I can talk to you about the atheist side of this too. Yeah. But when they're not those 80% who voted for Trump, I think this is what you're getting at. It's not because they all like Trump, but what is it? This is what bothered me about that. I get that they don't all love him. They're embarrassed by plenty of the stuff he does, but none of it is enough to make them say, I'm not supporting him, whether it's abortion or whether it's some other issue. And what troubles me, and this is such easy ammo for atheists to use, that nothing Trump has done, before the election, after the election, nothing he's done has been a deal breaker. for that same group of people. Yep. And it doesn't matter, like, well, he is appointing all these anti-abortion judges. We like that. That's what we're voting for. It's not the other stuff. Oh, so the racism doesn't bother you. So the sexual assault accusations, the multitudes of them, none of that bothers you. Not you personally. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't care if you reluctantly vote for Trump. And I'm curious what that is. The people in your church, the ones who aren't gung-ho for him, apparently they don't care enough about the sexism or the racism or what have you to say, no, he's not getting my vote. Maybe I'm not going to vote for the Democrat, but I'm not going to vote for that guy. And what does it say about their values if nothing else he does bothers them that much?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing to go along with your point, too, is all these things that Donald Trump has done. We wrote Bill Clinton off at the snap of a finger for him having consensual sexual relationships with so to me, I'm just like
the hypocrisy, that switch.
Oh my gosh, for sure. I mean, I think so. Being in the South, I really do. I don't know if I'll just say it kind of hurts my heart when any and every Trump voter are written off as, oh, well, they have to be racist themselves. They have to be bigots themselves. They obviously don't care about gay people and all of that stuff because.
And to be clear, I'm not saying they are racist. I am saying they're not bothered by racism.
Sure. But here's what I would say about a huge sect of Christianity. Trump is not a threat to Christian faith.
Yeah.
And I would say there's a very good chance, and I think I didn't do any digging on this, but I think there's probably a lot of evidence for the Democratic Party maybe at the very least coming across as this is threatening to us. And I am in no way, like when I hear Christians in America talk about persecution and how we're persecuted, I just want to roll my eyes. I'm starting to sound like a prick, and I don't mean that, but I seriously am just like, come on, we don't know persecution. Get out of here with that
and
stuff.
I agree with you. That's the perception of if we vote for a Democrat, we're going to be persecuted. I believe you that that's the perception. I know that's not actually happening. Because again, as an atheist who would love to see more atheists in public office, I'm like, who do you think you're electing? It's a bunch of like Sunday school teachers and stuff. They're not conservative Franklin Graham Christians.
Right.
But Joe Biden is Catholic. Elizabeth Warren was a Sunday school teacher. Pick your vice president. They're all Christian. I promise you that. So it's like, what do you think they're going to do? Because all the stuff you just mentioned where people think whatever Democrats are going to persecute them, whatever, they said all that about Obama, who was Christian. Like, he didn't do any of that.
Right.
And so it's like, at what point do you realize you're just telling yourself lies?
Well, that's
That's
because there's a huge sect of evangelicals who see republicanism as a parallel to Christianity.
Oh,
like they legit see that as, if you're a Christian, that's what. And dude, I'll admit, I used to be that way. I mean, 16 years ago, when it was Bush and Kerry, I would have been depressed if Kerry won. I mean, I was so full on board. This is what is right. I went to a Bush rally, and honestly, I like George Bush. I thought he's a very likable guy. I feel the same way about Obama. I kind of, and I do. I know it comes across as a cop out, but I try to not concern myself a lot with politics. But
so what was the biggest thing that switched for you to get away from that mindset?
Well, let me think about that.
And specifically, I mean the one that said, yes, we are Christians and we are going to be persecuted if a Democrat wins that presidential election, to, no, I don't think that's actually going to happen. That's not how it works. We are not the persecuted ones. That's the one I'm curious about. What caused you to realize, no, we're going to be fine. Republicans are not a threat to us, but Democrats are not a threat to us either. The politics are different, but the religious freedom will be just fine.
Well, and again, I don't know if this is the case or not, but I'm not so sure that Democrats have not spoken in a way that does sound threatening to Christians. Like,
which part of it?
I just don't know. But there's got to be some evidence out there for, and I mean, I sound like an idiot right now because I don't have it, but I'm almost positive there's been certain things. I mean, there's definitely been, you hear it in the news all the time. A kid busted in school for praying with a group, or a kid busted for bringing a Bible, and certain things like that. I think that it's easy for Christians to see that as a liberal mindset, that if we let that proceed, then who knows what's going to hit the fan.
I can tell you this because I write about all those stories that's what I do. Yeah. And I've done it for more than a decade and stuff. I've never, maybe once or something, and that's usually because the teacher doesn't know what he or she is doing, but never are those stories accurate, or at least the way they are written about in Christian media. Like,
that's interesting, yeah.
The way I've always seen these things is whenever they apply the law neutrally, is that the right word? Whenever they're neutral about the law and they just ask Christians to follow the same rules as everyone else, the Christian media, the conservative media, treats that as anti-Christian.
I can see that.
Like, if we play by the same rules and you treat us to the same standard as everyone, that is anti-Christian. We deserve to be privileged. Like, so when there's a church exemptions or whatever in the COVID crisis, when a mayor says no gatherings of more than 10 people, that also applies to churches.
Right.
Or just like it would apply to anyone, they'll say that's anti-Christian. When it's like, no, it's not like atheists can gather in groups of like 20.
Right.
No, it's the same rule that applies to everyone, but they're treating that, we're seeing it right now, they're treating that as anti-Christian. That's the way, the same thing with these school cases you just brought up. Like, no, because if they said a Bible club can't meet, it's never about saying, oh, no, drama club can meet, the atheist club can meet, just not the Bible kid. That's never the case, ever. And if it was, you would see all the church-state separation groups, at least the ones that I communicate with, which is several of them, they would all be on the same side saying, no, you got to let them do it.
So what is actually happening then?
It depends on the story, obviously. Yeah, usually it's, I'm trying to think of recent cases. I don't remember. But sometimes they have Christians who come in during the lunch day to proselytize to kids, like maybe they're parent volunteers or something. Yeah. But you have adults preaching to kids. That's not allowed for anybody. Or you say you can meet during the school day, but no other club gets that right. And it's like, no, you can't meet during the school day. If you have after-school clubs or before-school clubs, that's okay for everybody. But it's usually, as far as I've seen, it's Christian clubs trying to bypass the rules that apply to everybody else. And the school says no, but the story we hear is the school said no to a Christian group that wanted to do something without saying, oh, it's not like the atheist club or the Muslim club could also do that. Yeah. No, that's never the case. And again, it's such an easy thing for me to do, which is to say, if a Muslim kid did what the Christians are trying to do, would the Christians say that's okay?
Right.
It's never okay when Muslims do it.
Yeah.
You know, if a mosque wanted to meet of more than 10 people and you wouldn't see it is all I'm getting at. Every time it's these stories, it's always Christians trying to push the boundaries or cross the boundaries and get away with it. But the actual story is always, they don't like it when we treat them the same as everyone else because those Christians think they're special. The rules don't apply to them. That's usually always what it is.
Gotcha. Well, I haven't done the homework that you have, so I'll take you at your word for that, and that does make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I would imagine there's probably some situations that don't line up with that.
Believe me, I look for them. I don't find them, and usually when it comes from those Christian legal groups too, because I get their press releases. Every time they're like, this school said a kid couldn't read their Bible. It's like, okay, I start with the premise because if it's a Christian legal group, my assumption is always, I know you're lying. I just need to figure out where you're lying. And so if you read the actual lawsuit, that the complaint that they filed, or you read the story, it's like, oh, it wasn't that the kid was just trying to read the Bible. It's that whatever, they were, I'm making this up by the way, but like they were reading it during class when they were supposed to be doing other work, or they were, I don't know, take your poison. They were trying to do something with it that they really should not have been doing. Right. And if a kid did it with the Quran or another kid did it with something else, it would not have been okay either. So it's like, oh, that's what they were not telling you.
Right.
That's the thing. And so I just go into every story like that. I think, remember the movie God's Not Dead? At the end of the movie, they had a long list.
I actually did not watch it.
You're not missing out. But at the end of the movie, they said, we know this story that we just told you is like fiction, but here's a whole list of cases, and it scrolls on the screen. Yeah. Here's a whole list of cases that are either similar or that the same legal group was working on. I went through every one of those cases, and not only were like, I think every single one of them not really about Christian persecution, they all fell into a few categories of this Christian wanted to break the rules and they couldn't do it, and they were mad about that. And it's so predictable how these groups work.
So you would kind of go on the record and say, look, Christian persecution is not a thing at all.
Not in the U.S. and not in terms of you want to practice your faith and no one's letting you do it. No, that's not true. In other parts of the world, absolutely. And that's not okay. That's a whole separate issue. But no, in the U.S., like if Christians think they're being persecuted, I would love to know which group they want to trade places with that they think has it so good. Like, do those Christians want to swap the number of Christians in Congress for atheists? Because I'm happy to play that game. Right. Because more than 90% of Congress is Christian, and there's literally one non-religious person in Congress. Openly, I should say. Yeah. But like, if you're being persecuted, what do you think the rest of us are feeling?
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. So the next line of questioning, it will be hard for it not to sound like a debate, and I don't mean it.
Yeah.
So take everything I'm saying as I want to see how you process this stuff, because these are things that honestly I have surprisingly come into contact with Christians in the progressive realm who would certainly be able to argue alongside you. I just still don't understand. And what I don't understand is, and it may make me sound archaic, but I don't see how it does. I do not understand how morality, purpose, let's just stay there. Morality and purpose, is that something that evolved? Is that something that over time became a thing? Because I truly feel if we are just the product of evolution and there is no God and we're just advanced in a way more complex gathering of cells, we may be able to adopt a certain morality and maybe just be like, this makes more sense, but I don't see how it's founded. I don't see how there's any basis for it.
I'm not dodging the question, but the question I would ask back is, which Christians have the lock on morality? Because the things they say came from the Bible. This is the moral standard. This is what God said is good. Who has that right? Because they basically pulled it out of their ass too. And I could easily make a case for why that's not actually good stuff that they're suggesting is the moral standard. So the idea that some Christians or Christians in general have a standard and everyone else doesn't, and they're just flailing about cherry picking what morals are good and bad, like that is what religions do all the time. So like, I don't know who's not doing that. And to me, go ahead.
Yeah, I like that, but I guess so. I'll go extreme.
Yeah,
I don't understand if there is no God and we are literally on, like, I would see if and I would say I'm pro-evolution and I believe in God, but I would see if we are merely evolved beings, then we're on equal playing field as a single cell organism. So I don't understand, other than us just creating arbitrary rules, for instance, why murder is wrong. So, for example, we have lions who are way more advanced than a one-cell organism, but their very nature goes after a small elk and murders it. We don't call it murder, we call it killing. But if humans have obviously come up with the concept of murder, whether there's a God or not, how is that not arbitrary? And I just never have been able, and like I said, I've talked to Christians who would be like, are you serious right now? Like, that's the...
Well, I mean, what's the alternative? We can't function as a society if we're all killing each other. We have alternatives for food, which is why the lions are doing it. Like, we have ways to get past that. We don't have to do it instinctively or anything. But I guess it's, what type of society do you want to live in? I want to live in one that's functional, where people can do what they want, makes them happy, they're not hurting other people. I don't think it takes some I don't think that's a weird thing to just evolve as a society and say, yeah, we're all better off when we're not hurting each other. Let's aim for that, because otherwise it's just constant chaos for everybody.
So you have, and I've definitely picked up on the fact that you are refraining from using the word morality, because it
you
sounds
could use
like
morals, but like it's not a dodge. It's
no.
Okay,
I don't think you're
morality.
dodging. No, I'm saying I understand. Like, that would make sense. I'm not saying you're dodging. I'm saying that actually makes sense for society to be like, okay, what makes sense? Like, what's a logical way to be kind to people or go around killing people?
We function better. We function better when it's the first one.
Right. My only thing would be, how is that more legitimized than Hitler thinking he was doing the right thing? I know that's a huge jump, and I don't mean that people that are atheists, I'm not lumping them in with Hitler. I'm trying to figure out, how is there a basis for morality? And it sounds like you are saying, well, there's not really. It's common sense. Do things that work.
I mean, I just want to go back to.
And you don't have to be friendly right now. You can say, dude,
no,
that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
The only reason I'm pausing, I'm just trying to think of what the best way is to answer that.
Yeah.
It's not just a moral issue. He's basically stopping all those people from living their lives being happy. And so that's not a society we should want to live in. But the flip side of that is, I don't know, the implication that has is that there's something about the Christian way of life that says what Hitler did is wrong because murder is bad, that killing is wrong. And yet I could just point to, but right-wing evangelical Christians, the sort of people who make that argument, are typically for the death penalty. They are not all vegetarian. Like, they have no problem with murdering people. It's just a selective thing that they're choosing. Like, It's not like they're saying murder is wrong, so we're not going to do it. Murder is all over the Bible. It's always used in there.
But I'm not.
But again,
and
I could just say that our society functions better when people are able to do what we want and we're not hurting other people in the process. And the Hitler thing is just not even close to a gray area there.
But why? And
do you need someone to tell you that that's wrong? Otherwise, you would never recognize it.
But that exactly is where I'm getting at, and I realize this may not be figured out. Like
I've heard this from atheists too, which is like, I don't need someone to tell me what Hitler did was wrong. Apparently, you do.
But
or
what
other Christians do? You know
But I don't understand who gets to say anything is wrong. Like,
why do we need someone to do that? Why do we need someone to say this is right, this is wrong? Because again, you pick your issue, abortion, for example.
Yeah.
Which only because that's a contentious issue, and I think there are moral arguments that I've heard on both sides of that issue. Is that a moral issue? I know the way conservative Christians frame that issue as if it's a moral issue.
Yeah.
I could make the argument on the other side of that and say, no, you're looking at it the wrong way. But the point is, there are people who think this is clear cut.
Right.
But the fact that it still gets debated, and you will find strong cases if you're looking for them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that you need. I think you could debate those things. I think the Hitler one is an extreme case where it's like, I don't know why we need anyone to explain why killing all those people is a bad thing. You don't need anyone to tell you that. But telling women that they have to be forced to have their rapist baby seems like just as gruesome and graphic and awful to me. And I think you could find Christians that are like, nope, that's still fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it goes back to my original question is, do you see morality, and I think I said purpose, as something that evolved? Lions don't have that. Lions don't live by morals. You know, when an alligator grabs a kid
I would take
and
issue with
kills
that.
the alligator's not being mean.
Right.
The alligator's trying to get a meal, and it's a human being, so it's tragic. Right, it's tragic for us. So I guess that's what I'm saying is, do you see morality and purpose as something that humans were able to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, if you can survive as a species, we can survive without having to kill for our own food. Yes, some people do it for others. They're the hunters, whatever, but like, we don't need to do that. So once you get away from that, like, we don't have to spend 23 hours a day looking to survive. Hey, now you can have a different purpose. You can devote yourself to something else because your priorities shift. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So I guess the last thing I'll say about this, because I still feel how I feel, is what does it even mean when we say should and should not? Like, what?
Yeah, it depends what we're talking about. But again, I just kind of go back to every time I kind of hear that argument, it's coming from, again, conservative Christians.
But I'm talking totally outside of that realm.
In general.
Yeah.
But like, it's not like the Bible is right on those, or it's not like we're in a better place when we listen to them. So I don't know. It's always coming from people who seem to imply I have it right on morality and everyone else is just making it up. And yet the world they live in is full of moral problems within their thing. I mean, and that's living up to the standards they want to live up to. So like, the whole should not, ought to, what should we do? Like, those just seem like superfluous questions because it's not like the people asking them are living in some moral place either. And just because they can say, God tells me what's right and wrong, that's not true. They're making it up as they go along. Right. So I don't know why adding God to the mix somehow makes it better when everyone seems to be trying to do the same thing.
Yeah,
which is living in a yeah.
I mean, how I would respond to that is I would say maybe Christians suck at following God and how God truly is. You know, so that's my main.
Yeah, but they all seem to think like, no. If I'm following God the right way, this is what ought to happen. And even if you follow those instructions, it's not that they fell short of it or they might fall short of it. It's that even when they follow those rules to a T, things go wrong. We see it all the time.
Unless you stick with Jesus's words of loving your enemy. If you live by that, I would say you're probably going to stay away from the shittiness that we see from Westboro and evangel. You know, some.
I mean, those people would all say they're following the message as the Bible told them to follow it.
But that doesn't mean that they are.
According to who? I mean, every Christian thinks every other Christian's doing it wrong. So I don't know who gets to. It seems like Christians will do the same thing. Like, oh yeah, those other Christians fell short of what Jesus wanted them to do, but we have it right. But they don't. And it's not because they fell short of some standard. It's because what's loving your neighbor when it comes to I'm just picking on one, coming to transgender people. They would say, no. The standard is they need help. They need to be cured. They need to be fixed. And talk to them. They would have a very different perspective on this and what makes those Christians think they have it right on that. Like their standard, God wants us to treat gay people this way. God wants us to treat segregation this way. That shifted because opinion changed. And all of a sudden segregation, which was a totally fine Christian thing a few decades ago, that changed. Suddenly God's word changed. Like, it happens all the time. And so it's not, I don't get some Christians just fall short of where we are supposed to be. No, even when you're doing things 100% right, it's still a problem. It's just a matter of who's...
Yeah. I think morality is always a problem for everybody, but
yet it's always Christians blaming other people who are not Christian for making things up when it comes to morality. All I'm saying is, they're making it up too. They're just saying this is what God says the standard is. It's like, nah, that's just you're inserting that in there, but you're doing the same thing as everyone else. And this is what Franklin Graham does. He's a bigot. He's full of hate speech. But the difference is he gets to say, I'm just living the gospel. I'm doing what God wants. And I think he gets an unfair pass, whether it's through the media or through Facebook, who hasn't banned him. Like, those Christian people who say all that stuff, if they didn't do it from the standpoint of I'm a Christian, that stuff would easily be called out as hate speech. But because they're just pushing the word Jesus in there, it gets a pass.
Yeah. No, I get that.
And that to me is the problem. It's the same thing with the morality question, though. It's like, well, just because they insert God into the argument doesn't make it better.
Right. And I think where I land and where my confusion is, we can move away from this, is if there is no God, me, you, Franklin Graham, a member of the KKK, where I don't see where any of us can have the basis of saying we're doing something right, unless things like love and morality can be something that evolves naturally, which I don't see how that does.
Or we ask ourselves, where do we justify our beliefs from? And again, if it's racism, it's like, well, I have this belief, we're better. Based on what? The KKK is a Christian group. Like, they can base it on anything. And again, this is a subjective thing. This is a debatable thing in terms of, like, where should we base those things from? But again, if your principle is let's try to live in a functional society where everyone can do what makes them happy and you're not hurting other people, there is a gray area there, because what makes me happy might get in your way. But that's usually not the cases we are talking about here.
But you're saying that the right thing to do then would be to make sure we're all getting along and taking care of each other. That would be the right thing.
No, but I think that we're living in a better society in general. If that is a point, if it's
so it's logic, we're getting smarter.
It's not the words I would use.
Okay. We're
definitely not getting smarter.
Yeah. All right, so we can wrap this thing up soon, but I do want to ask, like, what would you say? And maybe there's nothing, but what would be the full thrust of if someone said, "Why are you an atheist?" Would you say, well, there's just no scientific evidence. Well, if there's a God, he sucks at his job. There's just no historical thing that I can look at. Like, what would be your little snapshot?
I mean, the simplest answer is there's no evidence of it, and the evidence people keep sending my way, which is the same rehashed arguments over and over and over. They're just not convincing. So that's the simple thing. There's just no evidence. But also, if I live my life without thinking about God, I promise you it's the same life. Like, everything is fine under the assumption God doesn't exist. Everything is the same. That's not evidence. I'm just saying there's no difference between the two. If you're looking for, like, why am I an atheist? Yeah, there's no evidence that I've seen. And the evidence people send my way is just not good evidence. And every time they send me stuff, it's like, oh, you think this stupid thing? Like, now I really don't want to believe if you're dumb enough to believe this thing. So, yeah, there's just no evidence there. But again, this is going back to the beginning of the conversation. It's the sort of conversation that I feel personally I've just moved away from, because now I just don't care.
Right.
Like,
well,
I know where I'm at.
I appreciate you digging
this.
In a little bit with me.
No, it's all good. It's just like, yeah, I know where I'm at with this.
Yeah.
I don't care where someone else is at with this. I'm kind of like, I'm just putting out this stuff. If whether it's on my website or on YouTube or whatever, and if it helps someone, great. But if it doesn't, I don't really care anymore.
Right.
Like, the idea of I'm trying to do this to pick internet fights with random people. It's like, nope. I perfectly see this as a one-way form of information.
Yeah.
I don't read my comments, things like that.
Well, please take this as me actually wanting to understand you. So I've got one more that you can internally roll your eyes.
It's all good.
But so
I'm not rolling my eyes at any of this.
I know, man. I know.
This is fun.
with the no evidence thing, it's and I'm speaking out of turn here. I'm no scientist, but it seems like science is based on empirical observations. And so my question is science able to, like, if the supernatural exists, is science even able to run that through empirical lenses? What if it's not? Does that mean that science is like the end all? If science can't look at something like for me, it just makes sense. Whether there's a God or not, it would make sense that maybe empirical data has a limitation. Like if there's something freaky out there that we don't know, maybe science can't figure that out.
Right.
So, yeah.
But I think you're asking, like, with science is limited. It's based on stuff we can test and we can confirm. you're asking, well, if it's outside that circle of stuff, which by definition then science isn't involved in it, then what happens? It's like, well, who cares? It's outside the realm of science. It's not an issue for science. Like, I think every scientist would tell you science is like a set of rules. It's a way to figure out the stuff inside that circle of things we can figure out. And so that's fine. If there's something supernatural, you're right. Science has nothing to do with it. Science can't test it. That's the whole point of it. But the stuff we can test, and here's my problem. Yeah. If we're talking about this circle of stuff and science can figure things out within that circle, it doesn't make sense to ask about everything else. The question is like, well, where is that circle? What I keep seeing is religious people try to take stuff that's outside of that boundary and shove it in there.
Right.
And they're saying like, no, this stuff is, miracles do happen because whatever, the rules that we set. I'm explaining
no, that makes sense.
They're trying to say science couldn't do this. And it's like, well, no, we can't. Like the COVID-19 thing, you could say that God sent it, but we can also say, no, we could pretty much nail this one with the science. We could figure out where it came from. We could figure out how to stop it. It might take time. Maybe we don't know everything yet, but there is a process we could follow to figure this out. This seems, I'm not trying to talk down to you. Science is a process. It's
right.
a way to figure out stuff within the rules of the game. And the question that I think you're asking is like, well, what happens if we're not playing by the rules?
Right.
Well, then we're not doing science, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
So people can make up whatever all other things they want to, but that's not a scientific question then.
Sure. So I think where and seriously, correct me if I'm wrong. So where you and I would differ then is your exploration and processing is going to stop at science. Mine doesn't.
In terms of what I can know, you're right. There's stuff we don't know, but that doesn't concern me because like it doesn't affect my life. Then.
Yeah, and the reason, I guess the reason why I say that is, if you were to say, I don't have evidence for God, that's why I don't believe, I could say, I don't have any scientific evidence either, but I don't need it. And then you would say, okay, well, that's so you.
That's an interesting point, because this is where I don't care then. Then that's fine. Then you have that belief, so be it. The problem I get is when people say, no, there is scientific evidence, or there is evidence that goes beyond I mean, now you're crossing the definition of faith. What is then? If you say there is evidence and then try to prove all the stuff that we're talking about, that's what I'm seeing. Yeah. And that's the stuff where I'm like, this is the best you've got. This is crappy evidence. Now I think you're an idiot. But what you're saying is, no. Outside of that, I have faith that there's something out there. That's a debate we can't have, because you believe there's something, I don't believe there's something, but that also doesn't affect my life. Right. It's when they're saying like, no, God doesn't want gay people to have rights. Well, no, now you're getting into the world of like how it actually affects people. This is well beyond the supernatural stuff. Yeah. And that's where I'm trying to focus all my work and my activism. Yeah. It's trying to put a stop to that BS, because I don't care about what you just said about like, I believe in something that's out there. I think I have good reason to believe that. That's fine, but that's also none of my concern. Yeah. And I would say, for the record, I do believe that I can't prove God scientifically, but I do think that there's a lot of things that I can point at and be like, dude, there's just, for me, there doesn't seem to be any other explanation for, how, again, not a scientist, but just how perfectly situated Earth is, or just how the universe even came into existence, or the axis, the size of the moon, and how much we need. I mean, those are certain things where I'm just like, gosh, just how life came about. To me, I'm like, it just doesn't seem to, it seems impossible to be accidental. So I do think that I can. And I think everyone would tell you in response, and I know you've heard this too, which is, it's not accidental. Like, there's a reason it all works the way it does. That's a scientific conversation of, well, we know how it came to be. We know how. You're asking like why it happened. How could it have happened this way? Which goes down to, those are the debates I don't care about anymore. Right. But the point is like the miraculousness of it all, that to you seems has to point to a God or something supernatural, where I'm like, nope, it's a totally natural thing that could have happened. And if it didn't happen, we wouldn't be here. So whatever, we're here. Let's make the most of it. And then I just move forward from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, out of respect for you and your disdain for all of this stuff, I'll stop right there. But I do. This has been awesome, man. Do you ever would you say, and maybe you would have to dig deeper, maybe not. It seems like based on some of our conversation, you would definitely say yes. But do you see any good from your vantage point? Do you see there being good for people that do have religious affiliation or see
like
themselves
is having
as spiritual?
Religion good?
I would say
is that the question? Yeah.
For people that believe in God, is there good that comes out of that? Let's simplify it. If you believe in God, is there some good? Even though you don't believe that there's a God, could that have benefits for someone on this earth to believe there's a higher power? Like, is there any good
I mean,
that comes out of that?
if people find comfort in that, if they think it inspires them to do good things in the world and they are helping people, like, good, fine. I'm glad you believe. If going to an extreme, if someone thinks murder is like just if they think murder is bad because God says killing is bad, thou shalt not kill, like if that's the only reason you're not out there murdering everybody, I'm very glad you happen to be a believer. I don't need that to say killing is bad, but all right, you do you. But look, for the most part, if it brings them happiness, if it brings them comfort, if it helps them get through the day, then fine. I'm not going to get in your way. I'm not even going to argue with you about it because it seems like that's a waste of my time.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I would feel the same way, by the way, about like someone who does meditation. Like, doesn't do anything for me, but if it makes you happy, fine. Yeah. Go have fun. Yeah. I really don't care. I feel the same way about that, which is as long as it affects you and you're not pushing it on me, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't avoid these certain things, and you're so forgiving. I appreciate it. Like, I think that if there wasn't a God, we just wouldn't know that murder's wrong. We just wouldn't know. That's why I'm saying, that's why I was asking, did morality and that kind of stuff evolve? Because if it didn't evolve, where did it come from? And so I wouldn't say I don't murder people because God says it doesn't. I would say I don't murder people because I know that it's not good because there is a God.
I guess the question would be, if you started to have doubts about God, you started on a path to atheism somehow, what would happen to your thinking about murder?
Yeah, I mean, so we're saying if I lost faith in God completely.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, I would say it would feel almost intuitive. This can't be right. It can't be right to molest a kid. It can't be right to rape someone and then kill them. I mean, it can't be right to steal. It can't. Yeah. It can't be right. But I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think I would be able to have that awareness if there wasn't a God.
I'm stealing this from my friend Matt, who is, I believe, used this in a debate somewhere. But he's like, I do, as an atheist, I do kill everyone I want to kill. I rape everyone I want to rape because the number is 0. And the fact that anyone thinks it would be anything different from that, that's an indictment of your beliefs.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
This is a great conversation, man. I hope it was kind of fun for you too.
It was. I don't talk about it often, like I said, so this is fun for me too.
I hope though, like now that I think about it, because we made it pretty clear that it wasn't going to be debate, and I didn't mean for it to be a debate as much as I really wanted to see what you had to say.
Yeah. And you know what's weird? Because that's not a focus of what I do so much now, as in like when I'm writing articles, which is what I do. They're all about responding to religion and politics and things like that. So the question of morality itself doesn't come up as much as Franklin Graham doing something as a Christian that is hurting people. That comes up all the time. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it just doesn't come up that often. So it is always interesting because these conversations and these debates are the ones that led me down a path to atheism, because those are kind of the ultimate questions that in a time when I feel like the world isn't on fire, those are good questions to be debating. They're always good questions to be debating. So I like that. I always appreciate when people ask them and talk about them. And I don't know if this came up with us, but like, I genuinely, and I'm not exaggerating here, I'm not saying it sarcastically, I genuinely appreciate like Christian apologists who say these are difficult questions people have about religion. I'm going to try to answer them.
Yeah.
Like, I always think they're full of it, but I kind of appreciate the fact that they're like, it's important. Yeah, acknowledging it and trying to answer it, and they've convinced themselves they have the answers, and we can have a debate about those answers. Like, I have a lot of respect because I think a thing that bothers me with everybody is most people don't care at all about any of this. They would rather just not think about this stuff at all. They would definitely wouldn't have a conversation about it ever. So, like, I hate that sort of apathy. So, like, there is some sort of begrudging respect I always have for religious people who take this stuff seriously enough to argue it and talk about it, even when it infuriates me. Now, that's very different. That's very different from the Franklin Graham types who are like, okay, I have these beliefs, but I'm also going to use it to hurt other people. That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. But the ones who are like, no, I want to have these debates. I want to talk about this. That's awesome. I wish more people would do that because those are important conversations.
Yeah. Yep. All right, let me brag on you a little bit. So
cool.
Us Christians, we have not left any shortage of things for you to write about. So I'm on Friendly
full-time
Atheist.
Job for like 15
oh my
years,
gosh.
man, every day.
Yeah, I mean, this is gold. I got to read 4 of them. E.W. Jackson says, atheists reject a God they can't see, so why did they fear a virus? And the first line is, E.W. Jackson has apparently never heard of microscopes.
Yeah.
Let me do 3 more. Ignoring COVID order, Massachusetts church takes a stand for the Lord. Pastor Chris Casey had 56 people in church on Sunday. He plans on to keep putting people in danger. We're almost to my favorite one, but here's one more. Christian prophet says Trump will be a great praying president in his next term. And let's not take that chance. Trump can learn to pray on his own time. And then my favorite, self-described prophet. Even when my predictions are wrong, they're still true. And your line is, the amount of twisting in this Christian logic would make pretzels jealous.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? This never seems to come up in any interview. That's not a knock on you or anything. One thing that I have noticed is whenever it's, definitely with myself, I could speak for myself, but also whenever I see people with my perspective writing about this stuff, it is always, here is the transcript of everything they just said. Here's the video so you could see it for yourself. And yeah, here's my opinion on it too, but I can just put it out there. Whereas when I look at whatever conservative media, when I look at what Christian websites often write, opinion ones, not news outlets or anything, it's never like that. They never say, here's what some politicians said, here's what the mayor said. They always take it out of context and they don't provide the full context. And I would love it if your listeners, whenever they're reading this sort of thing, be on the lookout for that. Because this gets back to the thing you mentioned about, like, the Christian lawsuits about the Bible things. Like, whenever I see, like, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, an atheist group, saying, this is what happened in a school and here's the problem, they will explain it. And they will offer the photographic evidence and the video evidence. Like, here it is. This is what we have a problem with. Whereas when I see, like, a Christian legal group doing it, they're like, a teacher denied a Bible student this thing. They never actually tell the full story. You got to, like, go to their complaint to see exactly what happened. I see it with conservative media all the time where, like, they just cherry pick little bits to infuriate you because they don't want to tell you the whole story, because the whole story would not be that problematic.
Yeah.
I don't know what the point is, the things you were just reading, the transcripts are there. The videos are there. There's enough of them that they are not all on the fringe. They literally, by definition, cannot be on the fringe when I can do this every day multiple times, and they're all different people. Like, they're not all on the fringes.
Well, God willing, it's eventually going to be on the fringes, my friend.
You work toward that. I would appreciate it.
I am, man. Hey, good having you.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Joey.